Hello everyone, and let's talk about how your association can adopt generative AI effectively through adapting a truly learning culture around this new technology. Now, you as an association leader are facing the serious challenge of figuring out how to make your provision of member services more effective and efficient. Effective meaning doing more with the same resources, so achieving better outcomes, and efficient meaning using less resources to achieve the same outcomes. And ideally, you'd be both more effective and efficient. To do so, you of course recognize you need to adopt generative AI for member service provisions in a whole variety of areas. And adopting generative AI means establishing a good learning culture around generative AI in order to ensure that your association becomes more effective and more efficient alike. And that involves 5 pillars. Let's talk about the 5 pillars of embedding generative AI culture, learning culture, into your daily operations. The first pillar, pillar 1, aligning generative AI with your association's strategic goals. So link the AI learning to the mission and strategy of your association. Highlight clear benefits that it provides, like member engagement, advocacy to various stakeholders, and so on. Use generative AI tools for personalized communication, for sentiment analysis. Demonstrate its value, in other words, to staff and also to volunteers, to chapter leaders, through things like member engagement and event planning. Have that strategic alignment so you show them how it aligns with the organization's priorities and with their own needs. And make sure that there's measurable outcomes like retention of members, like new ideas that are improve effectiveness and efficiency are part of this alignment. Next, think about leadership advocacy. So you as a leader and other leaders in your association must champion generative AI learning effectively. You can't just give it to the staff and say, hey, staff, do it, or to your volunteers and say, hey, volunteers, do it. You as a leader need to be actively involved and participating in workshops and discussions of ethical AI and AI responsibility and how to use it accountably. All sorts of discussions you need to be part of. You need to participate in policy shaping. You need to be participating, of course, in modeling generative AI adoption, using it yourself to inspire staff and volunteer buy-in into generative AI learning and deployment. That is a crucial part of creating a learning culture around generative AI. Next, the third pillar is a collaborative learning environment. So create cross-functional teams with generative AI learning initiatives. Cross-functional teams of your staff. So not only staff from the same department, like communications, but have cross-functional staff. Communications, education, operations, member engagement, and so on. Host internal innovation days and peer-led workshops where people can collaborate across staff and across volunteers. So get your volunteers involved, your chapter leaders. Make sure they get involved in these days, internal innovation days and peer-led workshops. Form special interest groups on generative AI applications. For example, both your chapter leaders and your conference staff can learn how to use generative AI tools for event management and registration. Both your chapter leaders and communication staff can learn how to use generative AI tools for member outreach. So that is a collaborative learning environment. 4, make sure that your resources are accessible to all levels. Some people are going to be more tech savvy, some people less tech savvy. Your staff will be full-time involved in generative AI. Your volunteers will only be part-time involved in generative AI education. So offer courses, guides, and tools tailored to different levels of knowledge, different levels of time commitment, and also different needs. So of course, different people in your association will have different needs and different priorities. And of course, make sure it's customized to your association. So have a knowledge base. Create a knowledge base with case studies and best practices that's customized to your association, not just generic off-the-shelf stuff that's really appropriate to companies and not to associations, not specifically to your association. Host knowledge sharing sessions to showcase successful use cases. Get best practices from your association spread widely. And make sure that all volunteers and staff can learn at their own pace, not that they're all forced to learn together. Okay, the last pillar, fifth pillar, recognize and celebrate success. That's really important. Celebrate success in generative AI learning and achievement in newsletters, have awards for generative AI learning, recognize chapters, teams, volunteers, staff individually for driving generative AI learning and innovation, and use the stories of success to inspire further engagement and learning. I'll share with you a case study of a medical association I worked with, which struggled with generative AI learning, so it hired me to help them out. What we started with is we did a needs assessment to identify skill gaps and opportunities. We did some surveys and focus groups, so we identified some skill gaps among staff, some volunteers, and opportunities for improvement. What are the lowest hanging fruits? We customized training to staff and to chapter leaders for whatever needs they had in generative AI tools. And then the leadership made sure to be engaged. Leadership from the executive director of the association, the highest level leadership in the association, as well as the highest level leadership in terms of volunteers, and that's of course board, got involved in ethical discussions and strategic workshops alike, modeling generative AI adoption and conversations. So we had generative AI circles and online forums which improved shared learning. So the result was that there was over 25% boost in efficiency for less time spent on administrative tasks. So administrative tasks by staff, the time that they spent on them decreased by over 25%, which is great. So it was more efficient. It was also more effective because we saw a 28% boost in member engagement. So member participation in events, that was very good. So we saw a very clear boost in member engagement, as well as improvement by over 20% in member retention, which is a very valuable funding metric for associations. So as we think about the path forward, embrace generative AI learning as a continuous journey, not a one-off training session. Foster an inclusive, growth-focused learning culture around generative AI, and use generative AI to drive engagement and innovation to make your association more effective and efficient while positioning it as a forward-thinking thought leader in your industry. If you found this beneficial, please make sure to subscribe for more videos like this and shoot me any questions at my email gleb@disasteravoidanceexperts.com. Again, that's GLEB@disasteravoidanceexperts.com.